What's up, guys? Let's get straight into it. I have a empty activity open right now to speed things up. The first thing I want to do is drag a radio group to here, pop it on there, and the next thing we want to do is want to place those radio buttons inside that radio group. So in order to do that, we need to drag the radio button not on the screen, but under here. So it's going to be under the radio group, and you can see how it's actually under, not under the radio group like this. Well, I guess I can't do it like this. I guess you could say like that. So you see how it's not in the radio group. We need to make sure it's inside the radio group. Next thing you want to do is you want to click on that radio group, and we'll expand it a little bit, make it a little bit wider, put it on the left side, and let's create those constraints. So we'll do left, we'll go all the way to the middle screen there. So we can click on these radio buttons and change these. So do radio button green, text. And let's change this text. If this pops up, you can just press refactor. Shouldn't mess up anything in your code. The text is green text. And this one's going to be red text. Refractor, we'll do red text. Cool. And let's give the radio group an ID as well. We'll do radio group. And that is all you want to do on the main. Oh, just kidding. Don't listen to me, I'm dumb. We'll do a text view as well because we got to have some text, right? So we'll do the same thing, drag a text view, create these constraints, put it here in the middle. Let's change the size. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see this text size. We'll change it to like 30 SP, center it, and we'll keep those texts as text view. So we can give that an ID as well. We just call it text view, refractor, and we can go ahead and move on to the main.java. So the first thing we want to do, guys, is for radio group, you have to implement a class. So what we're going to do is we're going to type implements, which is a keyword in Android Studio, and we're going to do radio group dot uncheck change listener. What this is going to do, it's going to make you create a function called uncheck change listener that allows the radio group to know which radio group and know what button ID got clicked, so you can activate whatever you want to do with that listener. In this case, we're changing the color of our text. So if you go up here and put the cursor up there on that line, you can do Alt Enter, and it should pop up and say implement methods. You can actually go ahead and click that, and we want to implement the uncheck changed. Double click it, and this should pop up. And if that doesn't go exactly as planned for you, just like that, like it pops up, you can just type in this override method, and it should work. Next thing we want to do is create some variables. We're going to need the radio group, of course. We're going to need a text view. We'll call it TV. I do believe that's all. So in here, we can go ahead and initialize those variables, and you've seen it many times. RG equals find view by ID, r.id. What ID do we want? We want the radio group ID, guys. Boom, and we can go ahead and do the same thing for the TV. So TV equals find view by ID, r.id. I think we gave it text view. We sure did. All right, so let's implement this uncheck change. So when the group gets clicked, what do we want to do? Well, we want to change the color of the text to green or red. So how we do that is a parameter that gets passed in the uncheck change is the checked ID. This checked ID is going to be the button ID that gets clicked when the user clicks it. So it's either going to be green text or red text, or in our case, it's going to be the ID, so radio button green text or radio button red text. So we just want to do a simple if statement and say if checked ID equals r.id.green text. And of course, if this radio button gets text or gets clicked, not text, we want to change the text color to green. So we can do tv.setTextColor. Do the class color, capital C, dot green. And so once again, this checked ID is the actual ID of the button that's getting clicked. And in our case, it can only be two cases, the r.id.radio button green text or the red text. So you can assume that the next if statement is also going to be if the checked ID equals radio button red text. You can go ahead and create that if you'd like. So we are going to run it, and what do you think will happen here? You would assume that the text view would change colors, but we are missing one thing, so it shouldn't work. Green text, red text. So see there, it doesn't work. But what I do want to show you before we initialize everything is, see how it only allows you to create one text, or I'm sorry, it only allows you to create or click one radio button. In the radio button example video, you could click the buttons and every button you clicked would be placed, and on the on-change listener, you would or on the on-click listener, I'm sorry, you would have to make sure that every other button gets unclicked. So with the RadioGroup case, it does it for you. So we'll go ahead and move on to the Android Studio. So to initialize all this, guys, we're going to do rg.setOnCheckChangeListener. And the parameter we're going to pass is we're going to do this, which basically means this class function on OnCheckChangeListener, which is this. So it recognizes that. So this will work, and we're going to go ahead and set up as well. We're going to say else if checked ID equals r.id.red text, and what we're going to do, we're going to set the color to color.red. So we're going to save this and go. This will work. I hope so. It could not. So green text, red text, green text, red text. Once again, the RadioGroup only allows you to click one button at a time. So what if we want two radio groups? Well, we can do that. We'll do the focus coding challenge is to create a radio group and make it where it changes the background of the text view and not the actual color text. And to do that, you're going to need tv.setBackground, not setTextColor. Feel free to pause the video and try it yourself. A little hint is you're going to do exactly what we just walked through, and you're going to do it inside the same function, except for you're going to use this parameter. So you can figure that out. That'll be quite a step there. And the answer is, let's go ahead and create a radio group. If I can get it. Drag it onto the screen, and we'll put two radio buttons in here. Let's make this somewhat larger there. Go here, and then we'll attach it to there. We'll pull it down here. Let's make this one a little smaller to where it all somewhat looks the same, right? All right, so for this radio button, we're gonna say radio button. We'll do, I think there's blue. Let's see what backgrounds are, guys. Let's do tv.setBackground. We can do set text. We'll do color dot. There's green, black. We'll do blue and gray. How about that? Gray. That's such a boring color, but who cares? We're done. So we'll do radio button gray back, and we'll say we'll refactor that. We'll do gray background. Very boring. We'll do radio button blue back. I don't know why it keeps on popping up. It really takes me off. It really gets in the way, especially when you get in like the zone, you know. We'll do blue background. All right, we need to give this radio group an ID as well. We'll say radio group background, or just back, since we're doing all that for everything. All right, so that will be the only thing you have to do in there. And here, you can actually do it inside this same function. So since we have two radio groups, we now have to use this parameter the same way we use checked ID. So let's go ahead and create another radio group. We'll call this RG back. And let's go ahead and say, let's see, we need to do the same thing right here, guys. equals find view by d r.id dot radio group back. And if you want to, you can go ahead and do the set on click listener. I like to, and go ahead and get it out of the way. Do this. Once again, guys, this right here, all this means is this class function called Uncheck change. So let's get straight into it. Let's put it at the top here. So what we're going to do is we have two radio groups. So we're going to say if radio group, if group, because we're going to use this parameter right here. If group equals the same exact thing, guys, as we did for the buttons. If group equals radio group, which was the first one, we're going to put all this in here. What did I do wrong? I did something wrong. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so it's almost the exact same thing. I kind of lied to you there, so you can put that one on me if you couldn't figure it out. So instead of the actual r.id, we need to put the variable that we initialized up in the onCreate. So in our case, it'd be rg and rg back. So if the group equals rg, which would be the text color, we're going to do these things. And then, of course, we're going to do else if group equals what's rg back, and the checked ID. And you say if checked ID equals what did we name it? We named it radio r.id.radio. We'll do blue back. And we'll say text view, which is tv.set background color dot blue. We'll say else if, and radio, we'll do checked ID equals r.id.radio button gray. And what we're going to do, we're going to set the background color to color.gray. Boring. So of course, guys, you can, if you're familiar, you wouldn't have to use this else if. You could just use else if you wanted to, and just say set this right there, which would make sense because we only have two radio buttons, so there's only two options. And if this one isn't clicked, then obviously the other one's clicked. But in this case, to make it more readable and explain it better, you can actually see what's going on. So let's run it, see what happens here. So let's go green text with the gray background, maybe red text, blue. So since we have two radio groups, only two radio buttons can be clicked at a time. This makes it to where if we had, one radio group with everything, you can only do the text color or the background color. So you can mess with this and do what you want with it. I suggest you to maybe add some buttons in here to kind of maybe add another radio group to do the background color of the layout. And I know what you're thinking. Well, if we initialize the radio group, why do we have to check for the groups? Well, you're exactly right. So if you wanted to, you do not technically have to check for these radio groups. You can just check for all the IDs, and this should work as well. Green text, blue background. It's the same effect there. The reason why I always do the check for the groups is just it makes it more readable. You can actually see what's going on inside the code. So let's go over this class one more time because it can be kind of confusing. So before you do anything, you need to implement the RadioGroup.onCheck change listener. What this does, it allows you to create, it makes you create a method called onCheck change, which in a radio group, it's like the set on click listener. What this is going to do is, and it's going to get that ID that is checked, which is our radio buttons. And you can say if that checked ID equals this.r.id, you can do whatever code you'd like to do. That is the video for today. Sorry for the long video, but the radio group can be some kind of confusing. Definitely advice, work with this a little bit, maybe do it over again, or maybe add some stuff, some more functionality, and try to get used to it. Thanks, guys.